Last time we talked about deciduous trees. This time you're going to learn about evergreen trees. The trees in this picture are all evergreen trees. Evergreen trees are similar and different to the deciduous trees you learned about earlier. We use the word evergreen to describe plants that have leaves and stay green year-round. Evergreen comes in a variety of shapes and sizes, but they all have at least one obvious thing in common. Take a guess. They are always green. Are there any evergreen trees like these near your home? Take a look outside your window. Do you see any green trees? One type of evergreen tree is called a pine tree. Pine trees have a pleasant smell, which many people like to have in their homes during the winter months. The leaves of most evergreen trees are called needles. This picture shows the needles of a pine tree. Evergreen trees, like deciduous trees, make food through photosynthesis, which occurs in these tiny needle leaves. Photosynthesis slows down during the winter in evergreen trees, but it does not stop altogether as it does in deciduous trees. Because the needles of an evergreen tree are much smaller than the leaves of a deciduous tree, it is easier for the evergreen tree to make enough food to keep most of its leaves alive and on the tree all year long. Wherever you find evergreen trees, you are also likely to find these things scattered around on the ground. So if you stand underneath an evergreen tree, look up. You might see some of these growing on the tree's branches. These are called cones. Most evergreen trees are called conifers, which is another word for trees that have needle-like leaves and make cones. The cones in this picture are called pine cones. Unlike deciduous trees, which have flowers and fruits, conifer trees do not have flowers and they do not grow fruit. Instead, conifer trees make cones and seeds grow inside these cones. When a cone opens up on the ground, the seeds fall out and they are spread by the wind. If a seed falls into the soil and has the right amount of food, water, air, and light, what do you think it will grow into? Great! So it would grow into a seedling and then it will become a sapling. In this picture, we see ferns. Ferns are not evergreens or trees. They're actually short plants that grow in the woods. Now, I want you to look closely in this picture because there's something else there. Can you see it? There is a little pine sapling, a baby tree, pushing its way through the ferns. If the sapling is tough, as many pine trees are, it will continue to grow until it stands high above the ferns. It may grow big enough to produce its own pine cones one day. Remember that the seeds to make the new pine trees are inside the cones. Did you know that a tree adds a new layer of wood each year? Raise your hand if you actually knew that. This new layer forms what is called a growth ring. When you cut down a tree, you can see the growth rings. You can tell exactly how old a tree is by counting the rings. This tree is a little more than 50 years old, which is actually pretty young for a tree. If it hadn't been cut down, this tree might have lived to have 100 or more growth rings. So remember, evergreen trees and deciduous trees are the two main types of trees found in the world. Next time you see a tree, I want you to try to figure out if it's an evergreen or a deciduous tree. The leaves might give you your first clue.